One of the ideas that I'm playing around with as to what might make someone join an organization that uses gang stalking as a method of control is the allure and seduction of advanced technology. If you'll accept the postulation that any organization or entity involved in coordinating all of the necessary resources and people and forming the networks with government agencies like police and political members, if you'll accept the idea that in order to do that you would need the power that's only available usually to governments, then of course you'd have to encompass within that all that a government is capable of. If you look at DARPA, some of these other advanced defense contractors and the technologies that they develop and use, weapon systems, you begin to get a good idea of the toolbox that they're working from. Now imagine that there are many different types of people that want different types of things, but if you're a government with all of the resources and money and authority that's available, you can pretty much tailor your pitch to whatever person it is that you're trying to coerce into engaging in your control program. From the lowest echelon of society up to the very higher levels, what I've read is that they'll use everything from blackmail, sex, drugs, power, pats on the head, to whatever it may take to convince the individual that they need to do what this organization wants them to do. I imagine for most normal people or most mortal human beings, most average folks, it's something along the lines of, I have this desire, I would like this thing, or, you know, I want that thing, or I want women, or I want men, and it probably goes even into perversions, kinks. You know, there is a market for that. So who better able to give you those things than an authority that can suspend all law and all authority to give you what you want, whatever that particular taste may be. What I'm thinking for some people, perhaps those that are disempowered, that wouldn't be anything else in normal society than on the bottom, as well as some of those who are in the upper echelons of academia or in the economic stratas, you know, society people, they might share in common a desire to possess technologies and abilities that would otherwise be unavailable to them. For the disenfranchised person who would be on the bottom, it might be an exercise of power that they would not otherwise have, which seems to be my experience in the first time I can recognize that I was assaulted with a directed energy weapon. The person who was doing it, to look at them, you wouldn't think that they were much at all. They were unimpressive. But that technology, coupled with the complicity and authority granted by the government to use it, made them more than they could have otherwise ever been based on merit or skill. For the other person who's at the opposite end of the spectrum, the higher position person in society, it could be scientific interest, it could be curiosity, and it may be just as base as the lower individual, because, you know, to rise to that level, you have to make certain sacrifices. You know, you could be a nerd, and, you know, we've seen in many of these Wall Street cases where nerds who otherwise wouldn't have been much in social circles go to work on Wall Street and make all this money and control all of this wealth, you know, are able to live in a manner that they wouldn't have otherwise, being who they were. So I'm figuring out what the motivations might be to induce a person into engaging in gang stalking, and I'm beginning to figure it out. But what's more scary than anything is that the level of technology that's been developed is hidden to most people, but not to the gang stalkers. The gang stalkers probably know more about what really exists technologically than anyone else, and they are the worst type of people, the most immoral, vulgar, possibly and base, perverted people that you would not want to have access to that stuff. So as I examine this and look at it, it's getting worse and worse. I'm trying to figure out what way they're going to come at me next, because apparently when a TI wakes up and becomes fully aware, there's two reactions that happen from the gang stalkers. It's either a time to try to recruit the newly aware TI and thereby turn them from a potential enemy into an asset, or it's time to neutralize them because certain people just aren't going to, you know, join the team and are going to actually resist even more once they become aware of what's happening to them, which would be my case. So yeah, I really don't know what's going to happen at this point, but I am going to press forward with trying to expose and educate as much as possible, because for me it's simply a matter of not allowing God's enemy to win, to doing what Christ told us to do, which is to resist the devil as much as possible. I wouldn't say so much resist, I guess, but to do his will. So, you know, I'm not going to be joining any kind of gang stalking crew anytime soon, at least not voluntarily. And I don't see how they could make me. But the reason I say that is I was reading something online where there's certain people that are very valuable assets to the gang stalkers, and apparently, as I was saying before I ran out of memory on my 1 gigabyte SIM card, what the handlers of the gang stalkers do, one of the coercive techniques they use is, if you're involved in an industry that's highly regulated, and I happen to know that locksmithing is regulated fairly highly now, and the last locksmith that I dealt with who has a change of attitude towards me, that's what he mentioned. You know, ordinarily he would have given me what I'd asked for, and it was different now. And his explanation was, we have rules and regulations, I can't just do this, you know. And then he said something to me that was obviously full of crap, you know, like, you know, you might go off and do this or whatever, and he knows that I'm a locksmith, so it was totally out of character for him to say that. It was a totally ridiculous thing for him to say, which was his way of telling me, hey, you know, things have changed, and I'm telling you this ridiculous thing because I can't speak to you honestly like before. But anyway, they hold people hostage with their licenses and you know, with regulations and what have you. I'm beginning not to like any type of form of regulation because it's being used as a tool of control and oppression by a government that is clearly rogue. Locksmiths are regulated. Regulations for locksmiths came in just as I had graduated school back in 1990. And they'll do the same thing with doctors because, you know, a doctor's license can be snatched, and then that's all that education, you know, decades of education as well as income down the tubes. Nurses, all of these professions which are so rigidly regulated, and the rules are strict for what kind of conduct will allow you to stay in the good graces of the regulators and keep your licenses or what have you, are highly susceptible to gangstalkers controlling them. So yeah, I'm beginning to flesh out everything more and more as I look at more on the internet. It's not looking pretty good though, because with the way our society is structured, there's a lot of people that even if they wanted to resist, they would be hostage, too scared, you know, that they could be destroyed, and they would be destroyed if they didn't go along. So I don't know, it's like I have to look at the world in several different dimensions now. There's the surface and the way things are supposed to work and sometimes do work, and then there's another universe and under universe, a shadow government that controls things according to a different set of rules. It's kind of sad, and I'm still trying to get used to it, but it's reality, so I have to deal with it. Anyway, just some thoughts on further research that I've done while it's fresh on my mind.